Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sci 3. I'm so glad that you're here. So glad to be with you. I'm gonna just stop and put your feet on the floor, help ground yourself. Take a couple of deep breaths. If you can make your exhale longer than your inhale, it helps to let more go. Let more tension go by making the exhale longer than the inhale. So do a couple of those, take in the air and refresh your body. As we work our way here through part 2 of the course, it's been tough. It's been rough. It's been emotional. It's made us feel and see things that we don't want to see in a lot of cases. Maybe some that we have seen and are trying to push away. And in other cases, it might be things that you haven't seen that are new. And that can be really hard. It can be really heavy. And so I've spent quite a lot of time thinking about these things. It doesn't make me an expert by any means. But I've made some connections that I feel as though they're important. And so I bring them here to share with all of you, whether that's the material about the environment or the material about our bodies. And this afternoon, I'd like to start with a story. Choosing my story has been really powerful for me. And it's something that it's a daily challenge, something that it's a constant evolution and way of discovering and way of connecting. And I think that if I had understood more about what choosing my story meant when I was your age, things would have gone differently. Not to say that they have been bad, but it's the idea of choice is so powerful. So we have lots of stories, and I'm going to share with you this story. Sometimes stories affect us in ways that we don't even know, someplace deeper inside. Sometimes stories leave us feeling and questioning and pondering in ways that lecturing can't do, in ways that are different. So being aware of this, I ask you to take in this story. This is a story told by an Israeli man. While he was in the Israeli Defense Force, his commander took him to the beach one day. And he said, Ilyav, pick up 2 handfuls of sand. And Ilyav did as he was told. He said, keep one hand open and then clench the other hand into as tight a fist as you can. And again, Ilyav did as he was told. He said, now open the clenched fist and compare how much sand you have in each hand. Is there more sand in the hand you clenched or in the hand that you have open? Ilyav replied, the open hand has more sand in it. Sometimes in trying to hold on to the sand and trying to hold on to the things, we actually squeeze it out. If we stay closed and resistant and shut down and fixed in our habits, trying to protect ourselves or the ones we love or our culture, then we can actually be more closed off. It seems sometimes, though, that the closed hand is the better option. It may be the safer option to protect us and what we hold dear. The closed fist is the one that's ready for battle. It's ready to punch or destroy anything in its way. The closed fist hides behind fear and anger with the belief of, if I try hard enough, I can get what I want and protect myself from being hurt. And yet, the closed hand isn't able to receive. It's not able to get any other gifts. It's not able to grab onto anything else. It's closed off from goodness entering. I know that when I get stressed, I can feel that my hands get so tightly clenched. In those moments, I feel less grateful and I feel more alone. But on the contrary, the open hand is able to receive and not control. It's able to hold things of importance. An open hand knows its limits. It's not trying to stretch its hands, its fingers wider than the sand could stand. The sand would fall. The open hand is a posture of saying, I will do my part and acknowledge that I'm not fully in control. An open hand is open to feelings of fear and pain, but also to those of joy and peace and contentment and a space for learning. With an open-handedness comes recognition of, I'm not alone. There are others here to help me, to encourage me, and with my open hand, I'm able to do the same thing for others. It's a life full of love. It's a life full of being present. And so there are people who hold their hands open and there are people that hold their hands closed. So that sand could represent belief systems, beliefs about the world, could be about beliefs about what's normal. It could be your assumptions, your definition of normal. So kind of hold this story with an open hand. Hold it someplace in the back of your mind as we go through today's class. I've mentioned this before now twice, actually, because it's these stories. And I want to emphasize that it's a messy process for culture to change and shift its stories. And that's what happened in these situations. So today we're going to dive into what is our current cultural story and how is it playing out now? How does it play out for us? So we've looked at these images, heart-wrenching, and I made the hypothesis that separation from ourselves leads to separation from each other and separation from Earth, which is ecocide. We are killing the environment around us. Somebody pointed out, and I appreciate this, that there could be arrows, the idea that separation from each other and separation from self, the arrows could go both ways. And so what's leading to this? We've been talking about root causes. So today I'd like to, here's today's Jen's hypothesis. The story that our culture teaches us creates this separation. The story, take that in for a moment. You might want to jot it down on your notes page. We're going to be diving in pretty deep here. The story that our culture teaches us creates separation. And I say it's my hypothesis. When I use that word hypothesis, it takes me back to the beginning of the semester when we were here. This idea that we are all scientists. Research has shown that people in any business, if they are using the mindset of science, this idea of questioning, observing, questioning, creating a hypothesis, and then experimenting with it, people in any walk of life can be can lead to greater depth and greater experience if you're having the mindset of scientists. And so today I'm going to open this up in a way that might be a little uncomfortable. The idea that that our culture teaches us and creates separation. And so keep your hand open, be willing to play with the ideas that I present. So what am I talking about? So first, what is culture? Culture is this way of our integrated human knowledge and belief and behavior that depends on the capacity for learning and transmitting knowledge to future generations. It's also what shapes our everyday life. It could be the diversions, it could be the way that we shop, it could be the way that we move through the world. Think about, what you know about other cultures. All those ins and outs. I've been at intersections in third world countries where there are 6 dirt roads coming into the center of town, and there are horses and cows and goats, as well as traffic that doesn't have a stop sign. Somehow their culture works differently. It works with that system, and it's beautiful the way it flows. And yet it's so different. Our culture can be everything, the way we move around in the world. It's the customary beliefs and the social norms. And so what are some of the stories of our American culture? We're going to take a walk back in time now to this, the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. The United States government under President Jefferson purchased the territory of Louisiana from the French in 1803. And at that point, that Louisiana Purchase covered all of what you see in green on this map. So as you go back in time then to 1803, and now the United States owns this land, and what are we going to end up doing with it? How are we going to figure out what to do with that property? So this, God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the air, the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. This was the guiding belief at that time, this Christian Bible quote. And so what this led to was the idea of manifest destiny. Humans had a virtue-bound biblical duty to subdue this land, to colonize the West. Manifest destiny is a phrase coined by a newspaper editor in 1845. The idea that the United States is destined by God to expand its dominion and spread democracy and capitalism across the entire North American continent. So it was under James Polk, who is the leader, President James Polk, who was there at the time. And this is, it inflamed sectional tensions over slavery, which ultimately led to the Civil War. The westward expansion of slavery was one of the most dynamic and economic social processes going on in this country at the time in 1845. Their claim was that without slavery, you could not have civilization. The dark side of this manifest destiny was that the white man's belief that the settlement of the land and its native peoples was preordained, that we were to take over this space using the power of Black lives. So remember that the Bible quote was a quote that was written also in a very different cultural time, and yet it was a story that had been carried forward. So, what about the people that already lived here in this space? It seems as though this isn't often talked about. There were millions of indigenous people living in the space that we had just bought. 90% of the native peoples were wiped out, either due to the death at the hands of the white men or due to viruses that the white men brought them. Between 1492, the landing of Columbus, and 1900, about 12 million native peoples perished. But these people that were already living here had a very different story. We took over their story. It seems odd now that some French explorers came to North America. They did some surveying and then declared ownership of this enormous territory. It's equally disconcerting that American settlers proceeded to disregard the feelings, rights, and lives of these native people that already lived here. So, what justification was there for European Americans to engage in what is really an outright genocide? Well, it was their story. Manifest Destiny says that we must do this. We must create heaven on earth and subdue it. It never seemed to those who were in charge that they might be doing anything wrong. There was some pushback. If you know your history, Grover Cleveland and Andrew Carnegie and Mark Twain pushed back. They opposed these ideas of manifest destiny, and it slowly became a disputed philosophy, which ultimately led to the Civil War. And yet, these European Americans couldn't see that the natives lived in a different story. To them, to the natives, it was ludicrous that humans could own the land. That was nonsense. They saw that all beings are animate and connected. And so, what happened next was this cultural genocide. The children of the natives were taken and placed in boarding schools, and their culture was forced out of them. Cultural genocide. The integrated pattern of human knowledge. Think about what the knowledge was that these people had before they were forced into this other space. Customary social forms and traits of a culture. So I put this out to you now. I'm wondering how do you see the history and patterns of manifest destiny still present in our culture today, related to the people, related to the environment? What does it mean that we still have those words of subduing the earth? So I'd like you to take 3 minutes in your group to talk about this. Where do you see the patterns of manifest destiny still playing out today? So, what about today? What's our cultural story today? We're going to look at it through this way. We're going to do a thought experiment. I'm going to actually tell you another story and encourage you to continue to use your imagination. So, pretend that you're an extraterrestrial and you're in your UFO and you're cruising placidly through deep space when suddenly you become aware of planet Earth. So your team's superpowers allow you to quietly land unnoticed in the United States, and you blend in with the Earthlings. So your first task is to observe Americans enacting their lives in a variety of settings, in schools, homes, supermarkets, businesses, building sites, sporting events, prisons, churches, all kinds of places. And in so doing, you soon notice that Americans spend a lot of time working, receiving something they call money in turn for their labor. You note as well that they use money to acquire all manner of things: houses and cars and clothes and shoes and food, gadgets, furnishings, property, etc., etc. By tracking their daily conversations, you deduce that these Americans believe that access to stuff ensures their well-being. So it is that you summarize the story of this culture with the formula: work leads to money, leads to stuff, leads to well-being. You name this story economism because in this culture it appears that the purpose and meaning of life is viewed primarily through the lens of economic activity: working, consuming, investing, inventing, manufacturing, buying, and selling, and so forth. As your investigation continues, you find that the central purpose of schools in this society is to train young people to join the workforce, thereby ensuring that the economy thrives. You also discover that the primary role of government is to promote policies ensuring that businesses flourish. As for planet Earth, it's regarded primarily as a supply house for raw materials and a depository for waste. Your team goes on to visit other countries and concludes that economism is a global phenomenon. It is at this point that mission control directs you to determine how well this story of economism is working. Are people happy? Do their lives have significant meaning and purpose? Are they generous and caring toward each other? Is their home, planet Earth, becoming ever more healthy, vibrant, and beautiful? Seeking answers, your team sets to work, this time surveying all available research archives and media outlets to access the effects of economism on planet Earth and her people. Despite the immensity of this task, it soon becomes evident that the health and well-being of planet Earth is in decline. Climate chaos, widespread species extinction, growing ocean acidification, widespread freshwater contamination, along with soil loss, provide plenty of evidence. As for Earth's human inhabitants, your team discovers massive inequalities in wealth distribution, with the richest 1% of humans possessing more wealth than the rest of humankind combined. Strife and violence are prevalent in many households and communities, and a multitude of conflicts among nation states. Your team is forced to conclude that economism creates separation rather than connection, suffering rather than healing, stress rather than harmony. In your report to headquarters, you posit that all this unhappiness is occurring because economism is designed to care about just one thing: maximizing money. It doesn't care if you're happy or miserable, if you are fulfilled or hollow, if you are humane or brutish, if you are gentle or spiteful. It doesn't care if all the oceans dry up and die or teem joyously. It doesn't care if the skies turn to ash. It doesn't care if you or me or the grandkids or the planet dies young or old, or if any of us live or die at all. It just doesn't care. Economism wasn't designed to care. Your team finishes its report declaring, if humans continue to declare their allegiance to the story of economism, their civilization will collapse in an apocalypse marked by unimaginable suffering. Economism. Work, money, consume, happiness. Economism. This is a significant story, and it's our cultural story. Here's the definition: a term used in analysis of capitalist economics to point to the social and psychic damage that occurs when all of life's richness, wonder, and complexity is reduced to merely economic dimensions. Might want to jot some of that down, some key phrases. So when we look through this lens of economism, what does it tell us? What's your sense of this? What is the purpose of school? What is the purpose of government? What is the purpose of Earth? Those extraterrestrial beings defined what they saw about these things. What do you see? What happens when we become not citizens, but consumers? So school, jumping through hoops, don't question, follow the crowd, learn as much as you can so that you can grow up and be successful at your job, which means be successful at bringing in money. Government, promoting growth. Who's going to win? Who's going to dominate? The earth as the place for supplies to run everything else, and the place where we dump the extras, the trash, the leftovers. So as consumers, we work and obey and consume. And I realize this is a generalist kind of view. I'd like to know what your vision is. So first, I'd like you to take on your notes page there, I'd like you to fill this in 3 times. To be successful, I need to. Once you have your 3 things, ways that you fill in this sentence, I'd like you to take time in your group to talk about that and reflect on what answers you have there. How do you see the story of economism connected to your answers, or not? I want this to be a very open conversation. So we'll take time in our groups to do this now. This can be a conversation that you continue along because this is important too. You must first realize the prison of your mind before you can escape it. So I'd like you to dive into this for a moment. What does that mean to you? Discuss this in your group. Might our stories imprison us? I think back to last week's class of the stories that we carry about ourselves, about not being enough, as well as the stories of needing to please other people, needing to be successful. How do those stories imprison us? So, our culture is a lot of this. I'm busy. Economism, how it's colonized our minds of faster is better, more is better, domination is better, growth is better, control is better. Think back to that dualistic system that we talked about. What happens when we push back against dualism? When can dualism be helpful and when can it be hurtful? A lot of what we have discovered is that that this can be a one-sided Sorry about that, everyone. So where we are now is to think about the effects of the way this this system of economism has led to the um, the imbalance in our society of wealth and how that affects all of us. So let me get this back up for you. I want you to take a look at this list of, this is the list of the 10 richest people in America. And these are, it's actually the list of, excuse me, the world's billionaires. This is the top 10 in the world's billionaires. And they're documented, ranked by their net worth. And it's produced every March. It will be coming out here soon in the Forbes magazine. Billions of dollars. How much is $1 billion? If you could save $100 a day, it would take you 10 million days to save up $1 billion. 10 million days is actually 27,387 years. $100 a day for 27,000 years would give you $1 billion. It's unfathomable. $1 billion is absolutely unfathomable. The world's billionaires between them have more money than a combined 4.6 billion people, according to a 2020 study. Added together, the net worth for the 2020 billionaires was $8 trillion. These are economism's heroes. This is the imbalance that those extraterrestrials were saving, were seeing as they were going around. And so as we assess what's going on, of course, it's important to understand that these billionaires, some of them are choosing to be really helpful. I'm not